Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our Da Capo Conversations, a mini-series where we'll be giving familiar segments a topical twist. Today we revisit Nicolás Lell Benavides' and Novaa's perspectives on their artistic process. Here's what Nicolás Lell Benavides had to say.
With respect to branching out, I think there is an artistic answer, and then there's probably a realistic answer. The artistic answer would probably be something along the lines of, I just feel so creative and I want to do so much. And that's true, I guess. But realistically, like most composers, I generally do things when people ask me to do them. So I think a lot of that branching out, which is half a joke, but actually half seriously, has to do a lot with the collaborative process between composers and performers. I think when I'm asked to do something like an opera, which is actually something that I've always wanted to do anyway, I've always been trying to build towards it. I write for those performers and what they want. When I'm asked to write or play jazz with ex-jazz performers, I kind of bring the previous knowledge that I had from writing opera and back to jazz. And then when I'm inadvertently asked to write electronic music, as any modern artist is generally asked to write at some point or another, I'm kind of bringing all the baggage of writing acoustic music. I think this comes from, I didn't study classical music growing up. I studied rancheras and folk music. And I studied jazz in the high school jazz bands. And I never really played in orchestras. I could read music and I could solo, but for me, it just happened to be what I was doing at the time. When I got to school, I realized I could just as easily practice funk music as I can practice opera, And so for me, it's just, I feel like I'm the same person. It's just different tools that I'm reaching for when I go for different mediums.
Here's what Novaa had to say.
I would say my path it's different from the litany of composers in a sense where I am not classically trained and I haven't. I would say the honest truth is forced, but I really enjoyed it. But I was forced to watch films from my mom's childhood. So I watched a lot of films from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and basically stopped at the 60s. And from that, I took in a lot of music. I remember the very first time I fell in love with Herman Bernard's piece, Love, Scene d'Amour for Vertigo. Mm-hmm. And I just remember these moments from listening to funk music, 60s music, all these music. I my dad and I were jazz heads. We go to the jazz club and we're the ones bopping our heads, to every rhythm the drum is doing, right? So with that said, I feel like I've been studying music all my life, honestly. And I take these influences, I feel, and I bring them along with me. And so I would say, with the Taoist perspective, it's really about being one with the creative process, being fully present when creating, and also allowing contrast to come very, very easily when it comes to the Taoist perspective, or kind of this meditative quality of sound. I feel like I pick up influences from Toru Takemitsu because I first learned of him through his book, and later after that discovered his sound, which is incredible. But what I love about him is he wrote about this, but he also put it into practice. His use of silence. To me, it's so profound how he does it. And I also feel like the absence of sound is, I don't know if it's something that's more used in Eastern lifestyle, but to me it was a refreshing difference from kind of the music I grew up with, which was from classic rock to disco. But it's about sound, and it's not about allowing a rest to linger. It's yeah. So I would say it's just, for me, I'm not sure I'm answering your question correctly, but these people that really spoke to me, and I guess these influences are my favorite composers, particularly Harold Budd, Alice Coltrane. I remember I discovered Alice's Coltrane, her work rather recently. I'd never been into her jazz work. I mean, I like her jazz, but it's pretty traditional. And that period right after John Coltrane's death, when she was experimenting with harp and jazz, I think that's cool, but to me, that's not the meat and potatoes. To me, it's when we go further, where she's really doing her own thing, and you could tell that she's just so free and doesn't care about fitting into a particular group or genre. Even I was reading the album notes for one of my favorite songs called Rahid Shyam, and I saw that I think she had like seven violins, like 2 cellos, and like maybe one viola, something completely very unusual, a combination of strings, but you could also hear that. You can hear this kind of piercing, high-pitched sound. And the beautiful thing about it was that it was purposeful. And, in contrast that to me learning all these theory books about, the balance between the instruments and all these things that are also important, but to really see people go out and find their own way of expression, and to be unafraid of that. To me, it's very fascinating. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like my influences, honestly, they come from everything I've picked up so far, and particularly like Handel. I love Handel the most out of composers from that era. And from him, I really love the way his intervals. He'll go up a fourth and then come down a minor or major second. And I just like that he skips like that, or he'll go up a sixth and then come down a second or a third or something like that. And it's just like these things, I don't know, you pick it up and you all, eventually you have your own sound. But if it's about who am I and how am I going to really express myself in the most authentic way, I feel like I'm still chiseling out the sculpture of who I am, and being inspired and emboldened by other composers. Particularly, I listen to a Meredith Monk thing because she inspires me, and then I started just listening to her discography on Spotify, and kind of like Rothko, I have a couple favorite pieces which I love, but for the most part, Rothko, I don't get the blue with the black colors, but he has some really nice pieces, and I felt like for her it's like she had some pieces that really spoke to me, and there's some pieces that were intriguing and creative, but not really of my interest. But those pieces are the ones that said, wow, Shannon, look at how Meredith found her voice by having these odd vocal ranges and sounds and tones. And what if you could do something like this in your way? So it would not be with using voice in that way, but it's the idea that she found something that was hers and something to connect it with. And that admires me so much.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure's Da Capo Conversations, and a special thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts and tune in next week for Good Measure.